Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025. So I'm making this recording on Tuesday morning, Pacific time. So when I start this recording, Biden is going to be president. Biden was president, however you want to see it. When I end this recording, Trump will be president. So there's a real transformation here, and I'm talking about Tuesday, January 21st, and we have a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto today, Tuesday. Well, I know it's not today because I'm recording on a Monday, but today, I'm assuming it's Tuesday when you're listening to this, and today, Tuesday, there is a Sun conjunct Pluto, and in this video I want to look at this conjunction between the Sun and Pluto and consider what it might mean and have a few examples of people who have Sun conjunct Pluto in their horoscopes. But before that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025. So here is the chart for noon, New York time, on January the 21st, and first thing you might notice is that the moon is at 0 degrees Scorpio. So the moon goes into Scorpio today at 20 past 4 in the afternoon London time. So that means that it goes into Scorpio 20 past 11 New York time. That's 20 past 11 in the morning New York time, and 3 hours earlier if you're on the West Coast, if you're in California or I am, Washington State. And then if you happen to be in Australia or New Zealand, well, the moon doesn't go into Scorpio until very late tonight into tomorrow. So that's one thing to notice. The moon has gone into Scorpio. That is a change. Moon transitioning from Libra to Scorpio, it is a more intense and emotional placement for the moon, and it is the center of the Via Combustor. The Via Combustor is, between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio. Moon in Libra, Moon in Scorpio, very close to it. So this is a time when things can just happen, things that we're not entirely expecting. So we shouldn't take everything for granted, and we should always make sure we have a standby plan. And with the moon in Scorpio, and when moon goes into Scorpio, we must always be a little bit careful about brooding. That's always a possibility. Moon in Scorpio, very emotional placement. And it's just because it's emotional, though, doesn't mean that we can necessarily express our emotions. There may be a sense in which we want to keep things to ourselves, especially when the moon is making a square to Pluto and a square to the sun. So in a way, we've got a Sun-Pluto conjunction today, but that moon in Scorpio really sets it off, because it does make a conjunction, make a square to both. And moon square sun, that means it is a last quarter moon. But this is the last quarter of the lunation of the lunar cycle. We've got a new moon, I think it's on January the 29th, and so, this lunar cycle that started right at the end of December, December the 30th, 31st, is coming to an end. And it's a kind of time of sort of wrapping things up. Of course, it's a bit strange that Donald Trump is being inaugurated as president on the last quarter. That does indicate maybe that some aspects of Donald Trump's presidency, which we see as being very new, this is sort of brand new America, in many respects it is, that I suspect there's a lot of tidying up in Trump's presidency. You think that it's a discrete break between one president and another, but I think in American politics, however opposed one president is to his predecessor, there's still unfinished business which the new president has to deal with, which in some respects may dominate his term. And Sun conjunct Pluto, this Sun conjunct Pluto hits its peak today. I mean, it did happen. It was fairly close yesterday. So Sun conjunct Pluto it is a time where things are a bit heavy, where we do think about the concept of transformation and how we might want to change things. And change is not necessarily over, in your face, explosive. It can be quite subtle, but it's really very real. And yes, it is appropriate that there is a new president with the Sun conjunct Pluto. Yes, he might have to deal with a lot of things from the past, but still, it is a transformation in America's society, in American society, obviously. The moon, before it moves into Scorpio, does make a square to Mars. Now that moon square Mars is very much going to be at the beginning of the day. I don't think we need necessarily worry about it too much. Okay, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, I will be about to look at the chart set for Sydney. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, that moon square Mars may be more prominent than if you're in the Americas, for example. There is a fixed star to point out, and that is a fixed star Altair, which is the Eagle, and the Sun-Pluto conjunction is on Altair. And to get you an idea about what Altair means, I turn to Eberton and Hoffman, Fixed Stars and Their Interpretation, which is readily available. It's a fairly thin book. It looks as if it's got about 100 pages, a bit under 100 pages in it. And they say about Altair, well, firstly, they point out that it's Alpha Aquila. I think that means it's the brightest star in the constellation of the Eagle. And it says it has a Mars character with a blend of Mercury and Jupiter influence. Tied up with benefic stellar bodies, Altair is credited with bestowing hardiness, courage and generosity, especially if on the ascendant. But it also can make people bold as brass and foolhardy in order to assert themselves. So it's quite a powerful influence, Altair, and it can be fortunate, but one might take things too far. And it says here, Altair promises rise in life and high honours. The native tries with sincere conviction to reach out for his aims with utmost willpower. He will avoid nothing in order to achieve them. Altair is good for the advancement of lawyers and military men. So, take that how you want. It is the Eagle, flying high and being ambitious, being sincere, and not wanting to change one's path, and kind of that fits with the Sun conjunct Pluto. Turning to the picture for Sydney, Australia, noon Sydney, as a representative of Australia and New Zealand, you can see that the moon at noon is not at 0 degrees Scorpio, it's at 22 Libra. So that is a lot earlier. And so moon at 22 Libra is making a square to Mars. So if you are in Australia or New Zealand, there may be a certain moon square Mars feel to the day. Even that T-square I was talking about yesterday is still in action. You've got Mercury opposition Mars with moon on the T. So it could be dynamic, but don't get yourself into trouble. In fact, you could argue there's actually a grand cross because you've got moon opposition Chiron and Mercury opposition Mars. So there is a grand cross today. I don't think you'll feel that grand cross if you're in the Americas. But yeah, if you are in Australia or New Zealand or Eastern Asia, there may be a certain sense of tension, a feeling that you have to do something, and you're aware of all the reasons why you can't do it, but you may feel you have to do it anyway. Turning to the heliocentric view, this is a heliocentric chart putting the Earth at the center of the solar system, and heliocentrically, there is the Sun conjunct Pluto. From a heliocentric viewpoint, is Earth opposition Pluto. So there it is at noon New York time. We've got Earth at 154 Leo and Pluto at 143 Aquarius. So Earth opposition Pluto. There is a sense of a power struggle, but also being aware of forces beyond oneself. That's us. We're on Earth. We're trying to work things out on Earth. And Pluto's opposition the Earth. So if you imagine you've got the Sun in the middle and you've got Earth on one side, Pluto on the other, and so it's quite tense, and we are aware that things can be difficult, and we're perhaps wondering how best to express ourselves. With Mercury opposition Venus, there is that challenge. We know we've absolutely got something to offer with Mercury opposition Venus, and we're really plugged into it because we're plugged into the cosmos. But it is a bit of a challenge, really showing the world what we can do. But I do think that it can be done. And Mercury is also trine Chiron. And with Mercury trine Chiron, the things we say, the things we think about could be somewhat radical. We don't want to say the normal stuff. We don't want to come up with the usual pleasantries. We want to say things which force people to sit up and listen. And we can do this in a sort of gradual, gentle way without having to put too much effort into it. So we can gently get attention maybe with that Mercury trine Chiron, because we'll know what to say, and we'll know what to say to make people sit up and listen. And just a reminder also, Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn are now moving very close to the heliocentric square. And, that's kind of appropriate with a new president. And this square between Jupiter and Saturn is going to be exact in a few days' time. I'm not sure exactly when. The trouble about heliocentric positions is, they're quite difficult to track. I mean, in fact, if you go to astro.com, you can actually find a heliocentric ephemeris for each year. So it's not as if it's inaccessible, the heliocentric picture, but it's not as accessible as a geocentric picture. But Jupiter and Saturn are about to form this square, and it can be about the economy, but it's also, with Trump, the new president, it is a change. The Jupiter-Saturn cycle, which started about 5 years ago, is kind of going into crisis, and we're starting to see its first manifestations. So that's a heliocentric picture, and I now want to look at today from the viewpoint of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025. Aries. Aries, the moon is changing sign. It's moving from Libra to Scorpio. And this sign change potentially makes things a little bit complicated. And as an Aries, you are aware that nothing is entirely simple, and people are not simple. You get close to them, you learn things about them, you realize who you're dealing with, and you understand that they're not going to do everything you want, and perhaps also there are limits to what people can do for you. And as the moon moves from Libra into Scorpio, it really is in the center of the via combustor. And so being at the center of a via combustor, with the moon making a square to the sun, square to Pluto, you appreciate that nothing is entirely straightforward, that people can say one thing, they can do something else. You shouldn't be surprised by anyone's behavior, and you shouldn't really get annoyed by it. People should be allowed to have their individual personalities. They should be allowed to do what they want within reason. But you can observe everything. You can take notes. And with the moon moving into Scorpio, you should be aware of your own feelings. I think that you actually have quite powerful feelings, and when you're with people, when you observe people, your feelings in a way become stronger. And there may be a sense of anger when you look at someone's behavior. And anger in terms of other people, it's like an annoyance about why someone is doing what they're doing. It doesn't make sense to you, and because it doesn't make sense to you, you just get annoyed about it. And maybe you'll express this annoyance, not even directly. You may just do it in a passive way, just by your manner. And so, Aries, do consider how you are expressing yourself. You may think that you're being cool and calm and you're keeping your feelings to yourself, but other people are picking up on it. And so it may be better if you are direct. If something annoys you, just be an Aries. Tell everyone what is on your mind. And it's quite possible that by being open and honest, there can be some kind of resolution. There are things there are things you're sure about, and if you're really sure about it, why hold back? Tell everyone how it should be. They may not like what you say, but if you are in the right and if you do it with a good heart, I think that there is an excellent chance that you will be listened to, and you might make things easier for everyone. So whatever your reservations, Aries, I don't think that it's a day for holding back. Taurus, the moon is moving into Scorpio, and Scorpio is, of course, your opposite sign. And just before the moon moves into Scorpio, in late Libra, the moon makes a square to Saturn, square to Mars, and as a result of this, there may be a certain sense of frustration. You'd like things to happen in a particular way, but for one reason or another, it's just not happening. And this might be connected with the fact that the moon is in the Via Combuster. The moon in the Via Combuster for you might be about you trying to get things together, and you're trying to do it properly. But however much you try, there's always something out there to frustrate your progress, or the rules might change, or other people might change their plans. And so don't take anything too seriously to the point of getting annoyed. You cannot completely forecast how other people are going to behave. And then moon moves into Scorpio, and then it makes a square to the sun, square to Pluto. That moon in Scorpio makes you feel that certain people can't be avoided, and you're aware of their influence on you, and it's not something that you're entirely comfortable with, and you might feel that your overall progress is being challenged. I mean, it's easy for you to feel a sense of challenge. And indeed, Taurus, there's some possibility that you assume a conflict. I think you would be wrong to assume a conflict, and you would also be wrong to think that you're at a disadvantage. It might seem that you're at a disadvantage, but if you look at the overall chart and what's going on astrologically, I don't think you're at a disadvantage at all. There is a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto today, and this Sun-Pluto conjunction, which has been building up for some time, it's in Aquarius, and Aquarius is a high-profile sign. I've talked about this before, and it's about you, and it's about your ambitions. And when you remember that the Sun-Pluto conjunction is on the fixed star Altair, this makes you very clear about what you want to do. And it's not that you're being a bully or that you're ignoring other people's feelings, but you just feel deep down you're on the right path, you're on the right track, and you don't really have to compromise. And if you feel truly confident about what you're doing, about what your decisions are, then there's no need to worry about other people. Other people will understand. If they don't understand, you will have the strength of character to get your way without having to make a big fight about it. Another thing to point out is that there has been a conjunction between Venus and Saturn, and this conjunction is past exactitude, and this Venus conjunct Saturn might have been a bit difficult. Saturn might represent something that's holding you back, holding you up, and it might have been frustrating. It may be that someone else was frustrating you, but Venus is moving away from Saturn, and Venus is in Pisces. Venus is in its exaltation. So really, there is not a great deal to hold you back, and it may be worth your while giving the impression of not being bothered. But certainly in terms of the way you communicate. I mean, you might have strong feelings, especially when the moon moves into Scorpio, moon square Pluto. You might have strong feelings, but I don't think any need to express those strong feelings. And if you can come over in a somewhat detached way, even if you're not feeling detached, but in terms of what you say, give the impression that you don't take anything too seriously, that you're somehow liberated from the material world and its issues, and you don't necessarily care what happens. People want to do one thing, that's up to them. If they want to do something else, that's fine. And by coming over in a detached and even somewhat disinterested way, again, even if that's not what you feel, it might allow you to create the right impression. Now, finally, I should say something about relationships. Moon is moving into Scorpio. Square Sun, square Pluto. There is a possibility that, over the next couple of days, relationships could take up more of your time, and there may be a certain amount of intensity there, and your first instinct may be to believe that the other person has got the power. I think that first instinct would be wrong, and you would be underestimating yourself. So again, you can be yourself with other people, and you shouldn't be fooled by surface appearances just because people seem tough on the surface and are tough and uncompromising. I don't think that is the real picture. Gemini, you are starting to take things seriously. In fact, you're not starting to take things seriously. You have been taking things seriously for some time. You understand that there are certain things that can't be trivialized, and in many respects, Gemini, you might regard life as being a little bit of a battle at the moment. Few things are easy, and you are completely aware of the things that might be holding you up, even holding you back, and part of you might feel, well, there's no point in trying. You're dealing with something which is larger than yourself, but on the other hand, you are feeling frustrated. And if you're feeling frustrated, I'm not saying you are feeling frustrated, I think you could be feeling frustrated. If you are feeling a little bit frustrated, then you're feeling frustrated for a reason. The reason you're feeling frustrated is because you actually know deep down that there is a way through, that you can find an answer. And the answers are very much there. And you therefore have to just keep working at it, and you just shouldn't expect things to just come together just like that. And if you remember what I was saying about the heliocentric chart, heliocentrically there is an opposition aspect between Mercury and Venus. So with Mercury opposition Venus, that does highlight who you are and what you can do, but you're at the same time wondering whether or not you're getting sufficient appreciation. And you might feel that certain people don't understand what you're doing, or maybe they just don't appreciate your creativity. But in terms of creativity, other people don't matter. It's all about you. And it's about whether you are satisfied with the way things are going, with the way things are unfolding. And an important aspect we have today is a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto. Now, this conjunction between the Sun and Pluto affects everyone in different ways, and I think it does affect you, and I think probably it affects you in actually quite a positive way. The Sun-Pluto conjunction allows you to look at things in a different way, especially as this Sun-Pluto conjunction is conjunct the fixed star Altair, which is the eagle. So there is something eagle-like about this Sun-Pluto conjunction. It's asking you not to get too close to things. If you get too close to things, you really can't see what's going on. You need a distance, and ideally you'll get a broad perspective, because this Sun-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius, there is something a little bit philosophical about it. Looking at the broad picture and considering what you believe in. Are you completely tied to what you believe in? I mean, Sun-Pluto conjunction is in Aquarius. It is a fixed sign. But then you are a Gemini. And I suppose, talking about Geminis, Donald Trump's got Sun in Gemini. I wonder how that Sun-Pluto conjunction is working for him. I would hope with that Sun-Pluto conjunction that it's encouraging him to sort of rethink some of his beliefs. I mean, I suppose it's his first day in office, and so he gets information that he didn't have before, and it may encourage him to see the world in a different way. But let's not worry about Donald Trump. It's a time when you can get access to new ways of looking at things, and do try to be the eagle, Sun conjunct Pluto conjunct Altair, and get some distance so you can start to develop some broader concept of what is happening, and I think that is very much the way forward. What you don't want to do, Gemini, is just to get stuck on small details. I mean, not details like in material details, but sort of factual details. Does this make sense? I'm upset about what someone says. These two facts don't connect with each other. One contradicts another. What is the point? You can worry about all these things, but in the process, you can forget the broad picture, and that's perhaps what you need to do. And the Sun-Pluto conjunction may, in certain situations, be about travel. I mean, not necessarily physical travel, but sort of travel of the mind. And if you go to a different place, or if you're in contact with a different place that might be far away, then you're exposed to a different set of experiences, and in a way that might be quite liberating. Cancer. Things change. One thing moves to the next, and we do have a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto today. Now, this conjunction obviously is not in a sign which is of direct relevance to you, but I still think you may be able to feel its influence. And with this Sun conjunct Pluto, you may be aware that things are a little bit heavy. everyone perhaps thinks this, perhaps though more than others. You're aware of things that you can verbalize internally, but can you really talk about them to other people? Do you have to talk about them to other people? I think in many respects you just want to sort of keep things to yourself, especially at the beginning of the day. Now, things do, I think, become easier when the moon moves into Scorpio, because with the moon moving into Scorpio, for many people, moon moving into Scorpio can be quite difficult. But from your perspective, the moon in Scorpio can be something sort of easier, even a little bit liberating. And it helps the fact that the Scorpio is a water sign, and it is a fellow water sign. And so when the moon is in Scorpio, yeah, sure, you might understand that nothing is easy, but at least you understand, at least you get what's going on. A lot of people don't get what's going on. And, with this, this moon in Scorpio, it makes a square to the Sun-Pluto conjunction. And so there is a connection there. And you can look at things behind the scenes and start to really understand what's happening. And I think that means, Cancer, that your position is actually much better than you think it is. Because really you're in a position of knowledge. You might not think that you've got the knowledge, but you have got it. And that applies both to the sort of mental, intellectual knowledge and also to the emotional knowledge of what is happening. And you can see that some people are not really being themselves today. They're somehow holding something back, or they just find it difficult to express who they really are. And I don't know if you can be helpful. You can maybe show some understanding, but you don't want to be curious. I mean, you maybe know things that other people don't want you to know. So, don't be curious just for the sake of it. And yeah, it really does matter that you don't underestimate yourself. And with the moon making a square to Pluto, that does give you power and a feeling that however difficult things are, it's in some respects nearly the end. It is the last quarter moon. So with the last quarter moon, the end of the lunar cycle is upon us. And, we've only got, a week, just over a week before the new moon on January the 29th. And so you might find a lot of the concerns people have are actually concerns from the past. And that might mean, Cancer, that you should make a special effort to be forward thinking, to sort of be able to look beyond the immediate situation and perhaps start preparing for whatever is going to happen next, and consider what you have to offer. And it's certainly not a time for doubting yourself. So there may be things that you're good at that you need to sort of start to bring out into the open, and it might actually be a good time for practice. You might have done something long ago, you didn't think it was important, but now you realize, if you're honest with yourself, that times are changing, and the things that you were good at in the past, well, you're still good at, and they could be very much appreciated in the future. So, Cancer, it is perhaps a time for preparation and not getting overwhelmed by short-term concerns. And these short-term concerns are largely going to be about other people and society in general. I don't think you yourself have much to worry about. Leo, there is a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto. There is also a semisquare between the Sun and Saturn. So, there are two important aspects impacting the Sun, your ruler. And as a result of these two aspects, you may feel that you're under a certain amount of pressure. Things are maybe holding you back, or you're starting to appreciate that things are maybe a lot more heavy than you had realized. You thought something was going to be easy and straightforward, and you now realize that it's not going to be quite so easy, and you might have to deal with other people's stubbornness, or maybe it's not stubbornness, it's other people's fear. Some people are holding back, and it may be you holding back. I mean, you are holding back to an extent, but it may be that the reason you're holding back is because you can see that other people are holding back as well. So the question is, what are you holding back? Or indeed, what are other people holding you back? Or what are other people holding back? And it may be that you reckon that another person is hiding something. They may or may not be hiding it, and you're guessing it. And as a result of you thinking that other people aren't being open, then you're not being open yourself. And so the overall feeling, Leo, might be that things are a bit stuck. And that is the impression for today. I mean, you can't be in a situation where every day is a good day. And just looking at what's happening, I'm not convinced that it's going to be, the greatest day. If I had to give today, a star rating, I'm afraid I would probably give it 1 star, or even 2 stars maximum. So all things being equal, things could be tough. Though with that Sun conjunct Pluto, you may or should have a strong sense of your own power. But with Sun conjunct Pluto, there are often 2 ways of looking at Sun conjunct Pluto. One way with Sun conjunct Pluto is to look at what you can do in a positive, dynamic and transforming way. And that's the way you should try to see Sun conjunct Pluto. But an alternative approach to looking at Sun conjunct Pluto might be to see, well, all the things that might be holding you back, might be restricting you, and that might be something you imagine. I mean, it may be an imagination. I mean, it may not be real, but there are just difficult, heavy things going on which are restricting your freedom of action, or at least you feel they're restricting your freedom of action. It might therefore be a day when, going back to the star rating, whether it's a 1-star day or a 5-star day or whatever, does kind of depend on you. If you take a broadly negative view and you take obstacles and restrictions at face value, then I think it could be a 1-star day. On the other hand, if you make a special effort to tune into that Sun conjunct Pluto, if you don't allow it to overwhelm you, if you make a special effort to take control, then it needn't be a 1-star day. It could be a 3-star day. I mean, even a 4-star day. So, Leo, to conclude, I would say that there is a lot of choice. Well, I should say something about relationships, so I haven't quite finished. So with Sun semisquare Saturn, semisquare is a difficult aspect, and I don't think you should expect much from other people, particularly if they are close to you. And it may be the case that certain people are restricting you, that they're restricting your freedom of action. And so if someone has a track record of being very demanding, of expecting lots of things from you, then maybe you should consider the possibility that right now they're not good for you. Not permanently, but just for today or perhaps tomorrow. There are certain people you should keep a distance from. And that would be another way of giving yourself as good a day as possible. Make sure that you're surrounded by people who are supportive and who understand your needs. If you're with people who in the past have been control freaks, then they could actually be quite insufferable. Virgo, the Moon is moving into Scorpio, and with the moon moving into Scorpio, there are perhaps things that you have to say, and if there are things you have to say, then I would guess that they're going to be quite intense. I don't think, Virgo, you want things to be sort of light and free and relaxing and easy come, easy go, a lot of small talk. That's not for you. And if you are going to say anything today, it is going to be serious, because the moon is not just moving into Scorpio. It's making a square to Pluto. It's making a square to the Sun, and so as far as you're concerned, there are serious issues which need to be brought out into the open, and if you can't bring them out into the open, if you can't get people to listen, well, there's no point in talking about it, is there? Because you're just making people worried for the sake of it. You may indeed be making yourself worried for the sake of it. And overall, Virgo, there is this creeping feeling of tension, a feeling that things aren't entirely straightforward, that you can't do everything you want to do, and you feel there's a sense of hurry, but you just can't do it, and you kind of feel that the only way you're going to make progress is to do something dramatic. But do you actually have the power to make it happen? Now, it may be, Virgo, that you're just exaggerating. In some respects, it is a somewhat tense environment at the moment, and you therefore should consider just letting it sort itself out, and try not to stay in one place for too long. Give yourself some variety, because if you do stay in one place for too long, there's a danger that you start obsessing. And so I know that it might be difficult to find variety today, but if you can sort of move from one activity to another, not get obsessed about any one thing, I think that would be quite a good idea. Now, as far as other people are concerned, there is a heliocentric opposition between Mercury and Venus today. So Venus could represent another person or people in general, and they are challenging, and they're challenging you to do things differently and perhaps to take things further. And this may relate to your own perceptions. So if you have a somewhat grim perception of what is possible, other people may actually challenge you to see things in a different way, to actually be more positive. And in the first instance, you may not appreciate this challenge. You may actually be quite happy in the state you're in. But if you do find there is that challenge, if you're being almost provoked to do something differently, you should almost be grateful. You're being given an opportunity to make the most of everything. And I think that is something you can do. But I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's just that if you're too obsessive, too focused on one thing, and you disregard other people, then it might be a difficult day. But if you try to be a little more open, I think that things can be a lot better. Libra, you are feeling that something is changing, and it's might at first sight seem a little bit difficult. I mean, not difficult for you necessarily, but just difficult for everyone else. And you just might be aware of a certain sense that tomorrow is not going to be better than today. Tomorrow could be worse than today. I mean, that might be the general atmosphere. And it's important that you don't take it to heart, and you don't listen too much to other people's negativity. I think some people are quite negative. I don't think you fundamentally are negative, but some people might be. And you then have to try in some way to get a perspective. So what kind of perspective do you need to have? Well, I think, Libra, you need to be as detached as possible. If you can show some distance, demonstrate that you're not necessarily obsessed about things, and be aware that everything passes, and nothing is worth taking too seriously. And so mentally being a bit dispassionate and detached might actually be the best approach. And at the same time, you're perhaps becoming aware that an obstacle from the recent past is starting to lose its power. It's not as strong as it used to be. And so the situation, 2 days ago is not the same as today. And if something hadn't worked a couple of days ago, don't assume that it's a static situation, that there's nothing you can do about it. Give something another go. You might be surprised, because as Venus moves away from this conjunction to Saturn, certain things are going to be easier, and certain sort of routine things that you thought were going to be straightforward, they weren't straightforward. You've almost given up on them, and you try again, and then suddenly you realize that actually things are better. While you weren't looking, almost while you were sleeping, the situation has improved. And possibly the main aspect today is a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto. So Sun and Pluto in Aquarius, in an air sign. And this Sun-Pluto conjunction, from your perspective, could be quite transforming. I mean, there is a question of how much transformation can happen in a couple of days, but you perhaps need to have another look at yourself and your plans, and realize that recently you just may have been not ambitious enough, and you'd perhaps underestimated yourself. And with some Pluto conjunction, you can reconsider who you are and reconsider what you can do, and realize that you've got something to offer that actually is very powerful, and it's not something that should be hidden. With a Sun-Pluto conjunction, there's always a danger that Pluto might try to hide something. You feel that people aren't going to be interested, people don't want to know, it might fail. That's one manifestation of Sun conjunct Pluto. But another manifestation is about power and control, and taking control of what you've got, and making the absolute most of it. And I think, Libra, this is something that you very much can do. Scorpio, the moon is edging into your sign. Quite when the moon moves into Scorpio depends on your time zone. If you're in Europe, then late afternoon, the moon will be in Scorpio. If you're in the Americas, it'll be in the morning, possibly late morning. I think in New York it moves into Scorpio at 11:20 a.m. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, okay, the moon might not move into Scorpio until tomorrow, but one way or another, the moon is moving into your sign. And with the moon moving into Scorpio, you certainly feel at home, but there might be a danger that you feel too much at home. You want to be absolutely confident. That's what you want to be. Confidence is important to you. You want to be absolutely in control, yes, and you don't want any surprises. And one reason for that is that the moon is, as it moves into Scorpio, it makes a square to the Sun, and it makes a square to Pluto. I mean, even just before the moon moves into Scorpio, when it was late Libra, it was making a square to Mars. And so you could say, well, what the moon is doing is it's almost making a T-square between, you've got a kind of very wide Mars-Pluto opposition, and then the moon is making the T as it moves. It's making that T as it moves from late Libra, early Scorpio. So indeed, in that situation, the time zone might not matter. And that just does give an overall impression of Scorpios, really being into their power, and also being aware of the limits of their power, and not being happy about the limits of their power. And you want to have as much control as you can get away with. That might be one way in which Scorpios are working. And there's no need to be too dramatic about it. You might feel that you have to do something, you have to say something, because otherwise you might lose touch with what's going on, and maybe in a competitive situation someone else might get the upper hand on you. But I think that is unnecessary, because right now you just have a good understanding of the way things are. You understand what's possible, you understand what's not possible, and you're able to get a perspective on wider issues of power and politics and law. These are issues that are concerning people at the moment. It's not just you, but you understand it, and you can provide a perspective, and you can tell people what's possible and what's not possible. And if you're cool and calm about it, then people are going to listen to you. And in the end, you might actually become some kind of stabilizing influence. You can bring things down to earth, and force people not to float around. A lot of people are floating around because they seem to be unsure of themselves. But you as a Scorpio, you're not floating anywhere. You want to really ground things, and that's certainly something you can do. And I think you're very much into what is possible. That might actually be a real concern to you. What is possible? And once you understand what's possible, that does give you the ability to take control. And I think that in the end, people will very much appreciate that. Now, in terms of relationships, Venus is starting to move away from a conjunction with Saturn. So this is fortunate, because when Venus was exactly conjunct Saturn, it might have been the case that some people were somewhat restrained. They felt they couldn't express themselves, and even the people very close to you, there was something blocking them. There was something holding them back, and I think the Venus conjunct Saturn had something to do with that. And so, with Venus moving away from Saturn, that rigidity and that concern is starting to pass away, and Venus can now start to tune into its real nature. And Venus is now, it's now actually making a trine to Mars. Now, that Venus trine Mars doesn't become exact until the end of a week, but you're starting to feel its impact, especially now Venus is past the conjunction with Saturn. And so with Venus trine Mars, it seems that over the next few days, relationships will steadily improve. And so, don't worry if there have been recent incompatibilities, recent arguments, disagreements. Things are getting better. And so make an effort to be more welcoming, and take every opportunity to communicate, both on a mental and emotional level, because by putting your effort over the next couple of days, you may be able to sort of reap the emotional rewards, by the end of a week, perhaps by the weekend. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, it is a time when power is an issue. I mean, it's an issue for everyone. It's not about you particularly. It's about this conjunction between the Sun and Pluto that really can't be avoided. And some people don't seem to really understand what's going on. Maybe they're just into power for the sake of power. I mean, it's not just their power. It's just seeing it in a sort of a zero-sum way. Either you have power or you don't have power. And you as a Sagittarius, I think you're able to see things in a more nuanced way. And someone has to explain, someone has to communicate, and in your own way, you're able to provide some kind of a commentary. You understand what's happening and you get things in perspective, and you're able to, in many ways, help people calm down, put people at their ease. And it may be that you're not trying to gain anything. A lot of people are trying to gain. They're trying to benefit. They're looking at things from their own selfish perspective, but not you. I think that Sagittarius, you have a certain detachment and you're not desperate to get attention. I mean, it's nice to get attention, but I don't think right now you regard that as being particularly important. But when you're asked things, when you're talking, you're very fluent. And you can explain things very well, and people will listen. And it's through your words that you can actually make things a lot easier. And I think you're going to be helped by the fact that Jupiter's in Gemini. Okay, Jupiter's retrograde in Gemini. I know Jupiter's been in Gemini for a long time. It's been since May, and it will stay there until June. But with Jupiter in Gemini, that just gives you the ability to understand other people, to be with other people, and because of other factors, you're not being very pushy. You're not desperate to push your agenda. So that means you're not threatening, and you're not part of the power struggle. And because of that, you can maybe go to places that you wouldn't normally have access to. So, don't feel that anything is necessarily closed to you. And with the Sun making a conjunction to Pluto, Sagittarius, that might be that you have an opportunity to have a healing power, wherever you go. So you might want to make short journeys, go to one place, and wherever you go, you have an impact. People listen to you, and you go somewhere, you make a change, and you just move away, and you can be a transforming influence. And part of the reason you're able to have a transforming influence is because your ego isn't particularly strong at the moment. You're not desperate to push an agenda. And I think that, overall, that's going to be very much appreciated. Capricorn. There is a semisquare between the Sun and Saturn today. And, of course, Saturn is your ruler. And so with that Sun semisquare Saturn, I get the feeling that you're going to want to have a certain amount of control. You don't want to, I don't know, just be thrown around by circumstance, random circumstances. The moon is in the Veer combustor. Anything can happen when the moon is in late Libra, early Scorpio, and you want to hold on tight to certain things. And I think that is something that you can do, and wherever you see a possibility of controlling something, you're going to want to avail yourself of that opportunity. That Sun semisquare Saturn could, for example, be about financial control. You don't want to have a feeling that expenditure is running away. You don't know how it's running away. You don't know how far it's running away. You want to know what's going on. And so, when the issue of money comes up, for example, make sure you find out what's happening. Find out about other people's plans, particularly if those people are important to you. For example, your family and money, or in terms of if you have a business, or you're just involved. If you're involved in anything to do with money, do insist on finding out as much as possible about what is going on, because I think you have a chance here to control what is happening. And it may be a situation where knowledge is not just about power, but knowledge is actually essential. So Capricorn, there may be things that you really just need to know about, and that is simply the way it is. So don't apologize for asking too many questions. Sometimes it really is important. And also, there is a feeling, Capricorn, that things might not go as fast as you're expecting. Things do seem slow. People are just taking a long time to get anything done, and it's almost like they don't want to move, because the old ways feel best. And some people might be actually stuck in the past. And it's not just people, it's just the world around you is stuck in the past, and no one wants to move, no one wants to do anything. And you might find that annoying, because if everyone else is stuck in the past, you might be thinking about the future, you might be thinking about the next step, but you can't take that next step because other people are resisting it. It's not just other people, it's society is resisting it. And in that situation, it may just be a question of, being patient. You might try to force the pace, but I don't think you'll be very successful. And so, just wait for things to change, or maybe wait for the ice to melt. Certainly there's a lot of ice here in the Pacific Northwest, I think in North America in general. So if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or certainly in Americas, wait for the ice to melt, because it is a bit icy at the moment, in a symbolic sense. And if you try to force things, try to melt things before the time is right, you might just cause damage and upset. Aquarius, there is a semi-square aspect between the Sun and Saturn, and this semi-square between the Sun and Saturn could have an impact on relationships. After all, Saturn is you, the Sun is ruler of Leo, so Sun semi-square Saturn might represent a problematic relationship. Why would it be problematic? It could be actually something to do with you. Saturn semi-square Sun may represent you holding someone back. And we get a similar picture if we look at Venus conjunct Saturn. This Venus conjunct Saturn is something from the past, but it's still in operation. Venus as a planet of relating, perhaps as a planet of other people, is just moving away from that conjunction to Saturn. And so Saturn still has an influence. And so consider your own influence and how you might be cramping people's style, and insisting that things are done your way. Because, right now, with the Sun conjunct Pluto, I think Aquarians are going to be more, I won't say close-minded, that's the wrong word, but they're going to be in a position where they have quite a strong belief in themselves and a feeling that they have things right. And if anyone disagrees with you, you'll kind of take it for granted that you're the one who is in the right. Considering the possibility that other people might be right is going to be difficult, and that you're wrong and they're right, I think that's perhaps unlikely. So, Aquarius, ask yourself how appropriate it is to be stubborn and to be inflexible. It may be, but it is the right thing to do. If you know for sure that you're right, that you know for sure you've got enough information, but don't be too harsh. Harshness is your enemy. And with that Sun semisquare Saturn, in certain situations you could be quite off-putting, and you might, I suppose, you might even undermine your reputation. You don't want to have a reputation as someone who is tough and uncompromising and is difficult. And so try to ease up if you possibly can, or maybe you don't necessarily need anyone's help. You don't need to tell anyone what to do. You can instead just do things your own way and not put yourself in a position where there is any kind of argument. Though the moon moving into Scorpio does make a square to Pluto and a square to the sun, and that's going to be especially important if you're in the Americas, because that moon moving into Scorpio, that takes place this morning. I mean, you might feel it to some extent in Europe. I mean, it happens at late afternoon in Europe, the moon moving into Scorpio. But the moon making a square to Sun, square to Pluto, for you, I think that aspect might work in your favour. It makes you very definite and very clear about what you want, and it also gives you the power to see things through. So from a perspective of business or career, you're able to sort of have an idea, develop a concept, and really be able to force it through. And even if you're in Australia or New Zealand or Asia, then tomorrow the moon will move into Scorpio, so then you'll be able to take advantage of this. So in terms of having a single aim and being able to make it happen, then today you can do it. And of all the 12 signs, it could be argued right now that Aquarius is one of the strongest. And I think you're going to be helped by this conjunction between the Sun and Pluto. It is very empowering, and it reminds you that Pluto is in Aquarius, and it stays in Aquarius until the early 2040s. Pisces, you, I think, have things that you would like to communicate. You've been thinking hard, and now might be a time when you want to express some of your thoughts, and because they're coming together. It's taken a bit of time to get things together, but things are starting to move, and you've had some ideas. Things have occurred to you, and now would be a great time to get them out into the open. And I think that in general, people are going to listen to you, and the more far-sighted you can be, the better. Don't give people the sort of normal, boring stuff relating to the past. People don't want to hear that. People want to be excited, and they want to hear about possibilities. And that is, I believe, something that you can offer. I mean, not necessarily in a dramatic way, but your job is to provide alternative possibilities, and that will be very much appreciated. Though there may be something holding you back, because the Sun is making a semisquare to Saturn today, and that Sun semisquare Saturn is quite an important aspect. And so Sun in Aquarius making a semisquare to Saturn, it might be the case that there's something bothering you. That Sun in Aquarius, in your 12th house. I mean, it's in the 12th house because Aquarius is the sign, before Pisces, and it's going to be nearly a month before the Sun actually gets into Pisces. So there's something bothering you, something you feel is important, but you're not quite ready to bring it out into the open or to discuss it, but perhaps because it hasn't been enough preparation, and it just may be something that you need to do a little bit more work on. You need to give it some more thought, and if you don't work on it, then you're going to be stuck, because you're going to be thinking about it, but you're going to be frustrated that you're not actually taking action. And so with this Sun semisquare Saturn, this may represent something that you just need to do, and you need to do it the sooner the better. And certainly over the coming week, there is a sense in which you need to give yourself space to work on what needs to be done, and making sure that it's done as well as possible. And I don't think it's anything that you need to shout about or to discuss with other people. It's your own project, or maybe it's your own challenge, a challenge that you set yourself, and now you've just got to complete it, get it finished. And once you've done that, things will be a lot easier. And really, that is all there is to say. I mean, the main thing, Pisces, is to try to have a fairly broad mind, and especially in terms of what you're saying. People need excitement. You may not be able to provide total excitement, but you're able to provide possibilities. And if you can talk about possibilities and talk about the future, I think a lot of people are really going to like you for it. And that's it. Those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And I'm now going to transition to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 59, which is dispersion. Dispersion is about the rains. It can be about a storm or a flood, and it can wash everything away. Now, there used to be a time with these I Ching readings where dispersion would come up a lot, but we haven't had dispersion for a long time. But anyway, dispersion is back. And dispersion means that things have to be cleared out. And with dispersion, you often think about power washing or a washing machine. Everything just gets cleaned, and you just think about rain. And if you look at the hexagram for dispersion, the top 3 lines represent the wind, and the bottom 3 lines represent the water, particularly the abyss. So it's sort of wind across the sea, wind across not a lake, it's more like the abyss, and it all gets stirred up. And it seems to be a rather disturbing time. It feels like things are not happening, and well, they are happening, but they're not happening the way we want it to happen. And with chaos, comes confusion and a feeling that it's all rather disastrous. And this may actually reflect what we're seeing astrologically. Sun conjunct Pluto, it does seem to be heavy. I mean, I know that you don't really associate Sun conjunct Pluto as a storm, but it does feel that in many respects, things are being undermined, and our immediate reaction to whatever is going on is not particularly positive. We think that things are bad, things are getting worse, and it's certainly a situation where, on the face of it, we simply don't have the strength to see things through to a successful conclusion. Indeed, we may not have the strength to stand up to the storm that is all around us. But the I Ching uses the symbol of the horse, and the fact that we're riding on a horse. I don't know anything about horse riding, but it's saying that the horse that we're riding on can actually, in some respects, save us. So there is another power available to us. So however bad things are, however bad the storm, we need to take what we've got and, I suppose, look at the companionship. And we are accompanied by our own horse, and our horse may represent our inner strength. It allows us to escape from something, I suppose. The horse can move quickly, and the horse can get us out of trouble. And so that's the bottom line moving. And then the fourth line moves. And the fourth line indicates that the storm is quite hectic. We do get swept along by the storm, and when the storm reaches its peak, a lot of things get dissolved. Things we take for granted get broken up. Maybe even friendships or associations get broken up. We find that it's just not like it used to be, and it does seem very disturbing. But then what's actually happened with the storm is that we have been almost picked up and moved to a different place. And in fact, the storm has served to advance us. We've been moved forward. We would not have been able to make that distance on our own, in our own way. We have just been advanced, and we are now ahead of the pack. We are actually different from the pack. We've found that our links with other people have become weaker, and because they've become weaker, that's allowed us to make progress. So this hexagram dispersion, which on the surface seems a very difficult hexagram, ends up as being very positive, and it allows us to move forward much faster than we'd be able to do if everything was calm and relaxed. And so we have two lines moving, and that means we do move to a second hexagram. And the hexagram we move to is hexagram 10, which is treading. And when we're talking about treading, we're talking about tigers. And what we must not do is tread on the tiger's tail. And treading represents a delicate situation, a situation where we do have to be very careful, but we do have to advance. We can advance forward. It's a situation where, under normal circumstances, we would hold back because the situation was essentially too dangerous. I mean, you'd think if there's a tiger in front of us, we want to back off. But in this situation, we go forward. We understand there is a tiger. The tiger notices us. We might even make a couple of mistakes. And the tiger could, as a result of those mistakes, eat us if it really wanted to, or bite us. But we're tolerated for some reason, for whatever reason. We're allowed to move forward. We're allowed to be a little bit hasty. We get away with it. And we still have to be careful. We mustn't make assumptions. But if we tread carefully around the obstacle, yes, sometimes we'll trip up, but we're trying our hardest to do it right. And we do it right, and the tiger doesn't bite us. I mean, even if a tiger does bite us, I don't know, it seems to indicate that it's not so bad. It's only a flesh wound. We can progress. I mean, because the I Ching does talk about a tiger biting us, but it not being the end of the world. So we can we can move forward. So overall, we've got two difficult hexagrams. We've got dispersion, then treading, but the end result actually seems to be quite fortunate. And now I want to finish with the Sun conjunct Pluto. And so today the Sun is conjunct Pluto, and the Sun conjunct Pluto is not an unusual aspect. It happens every year. And of course, when the Pluto is in, Capricorn or Aquarius, the Sun conjunct Pluto will happen, at the beginning of the year. It will happen in the northern hemisphere. It will happen in the winter. In the southern hemisphere, it will happen in the summer. When the Sun is in late Capricorn or early Aquarius, as it will be for the next few years. And so here is the conjunction between the Sun and Pluto, which takes place at 12:29 p.m. London time, so around lunchtime, set for London. And the Sun-Pluto conjunction, there it is. It's at 1:43 Aquarius, and it's not in itself an unusual aspect. I'm not sure if we should get too excited about it. And I understand that we've just had a new president, that Donald Trump is now, the 47th president. So Sun-Pluto conjunction kind of represents the snake shedding its skin. So if the snake is the presidency of the United States, then the skin represents the personality. One skin is Biden, another skin is Trump, and sometimes, very rarely, the mask repeats itself, Trump being president number 45 and president number 47, like Grover Cleveland. He's only the second time you've had non-consecutive terms by the same person. So there is a sense of transformation and change. And the Sun-Pluto conjunction, although it happens every year, I think the very fact that it's happening at the same time as a new president, it just makes it more poignant. And there is this feeling that things aren't going to be the same. And the Sun-Pluto conjunction reminds us of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, as you know, is an aspect that I take very seriously. And the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was on December the 21st, 2020, so it was 5 years ago. Is that right? 5 years ago? Let me get that right. Or was it 4 years ago? 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago. And that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was at 0 degrees 29 Aquarius. And so this Sun-Pluto conjunction is on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which was on December 21st, 2020. And so it's just a reminder of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, which started in 2020 and at the end of 2020. This is a rather different Jupiter-Saturn cycle. Normally you would have expected Biden or the Democrats to have got 2 terms because it's a new Jupiter-Saturn cycle. You don't usually, and certainly in modern American history, get a change of presidency in years ending in 4, just 4 or 5 years after the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. But I think things were messed up this cycle because you had a presidency who didn't, for one reason or another, wasn't able to stand for a second term. And so it is messed up. But this Sun-Pluto conjunction, when you look at what's happening, it just reminds us of this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction and what it is about, and that things have changed. And I've talked about this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in some detail, and I think one way of looking at it could be about power moving from the west to the east. China, Asia, the decline of the Western world. And I associated that with the fact that this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction took place in Aquarius, and there is an association between Aquarius and Russia and Eastern Europe, and perhaps this is part of what's happening. I've heard this view that Poland is in the relatively near future, next 10 or 20 years, is going to overtake Britain and become a more important economy. I mean, that's an interesting idea, and right now that seems to be very likely. And you could perhaps associate Poland and places east of Poland, like Russia or even Ukraine, with this, and so that might be part of the process. Although, with Trump becoming president, there may be a hiccup here. I don't know. We'll have to see. But it does link with the new Jupiter-Saturn cycle, this Sun-Pluto conjunction, and I think that things going on right now are very big in terms of the destiny of the world. And so it's not something to be underestimated, even though the Sun-Pluto conjunction is quite a fast-moving aspect. Do look at the news, look at what's happening, look at what's happening in the Middle East, look at what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, because in many respects it's the sign of things to come. As far as ordinary people are concerned, okay, let's start with some famous people first. I want to just very quickly look at a couple of people who might be impacted by this Sun-Pluto conjunction. And so we have the Polish president, the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, for example. So here's Donald Tusk's chart, and Donald Tusk was born on April 22nd, 1957, and Donald Tusk has a Sun-Neptune opposition. There's his Sun, there's his Neptune, his Sun at 133 Taurus, Neptune at 114 Scorpio, and Venus is involved with it as well. And so he has got a Sun-Pluto conjunction, pretty close to the square of a major configuration in his chart, and this may say something about what's going on in Poland, the pressures he's under. Maybe Trump becoming president is going to have an immediate impact on Poland. I think people like Donald Tusk would have very much preferred Kamala Harris to have won, because they're in a bit of panic in Europe now with the new president. So that might cause some changes in Poland, and it might put Donald Tusk under a certain amount of pressure. And someone I've been talking about very recently is Michael Saylor. And so Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy fame, he's impacted by this conjunction because it's on his Mercury-Venus midpoint. So Michael Saylor has his Mercury at 2 degrees 9 Aquarius, and I don't have a time of birth for him. So I know this chart shows houses, but there's no time of birth for Michael Saylor. But the Sun-Pluto conjunction is on his Mercury-Venus midpoint, and this could be a very creative time for him. I mean, we do have a new president, a president who's supposedly going to be Bitcoin friendly, and in his case, I would probably see this Sun-Pluto conjunction as actually being quite empowering. So, he might well have the ear of the White House now, and this should help him in terms of what he's trying to do with Bitcoin and his company MicroStrategy. A person I know next to nothing about, whose chart I do occasionally look at, is Taylor Swift. Now, Taylor Swift again, I'm not interested in her, but I understand she's a very important person and a very rich woman, and she has her Venus at 1 degree 59 Aquarius. Well, I don't know a time of birth for Taylor Swift, but she's got a Sun-Pluto conjunction on her Venus, and Venus, I think, could be a universal significator of a musician. It could also say something about her and how she appears and her relationships, and with Sun Venus on her, with this Sun Pluto conjunction on her Venus, and it's quite intense for her, and so that may say something about her relationships. What was his name? Travis Kelce might have some implication there. And how's it going to work? I mean, Sun Pluto conjunction on her Venus could represent getting closer to someone, getting obsessed about someone, or the ties getting even closer, but it might just be too much of a good thing. So her relationships may undergo a degree of change, but it's quite a powerful time, and I suppose if she wants to write good songs, write intense, emotionally charged songs, having the Sun-Pluto conjunction on her Venus might actually be quite useful. And finally, there is if Nayib Bukele. So Nayib Bukele is the president of El Salvador. No, that's not. And he's a Leo. He was born very close to the. He was born very close to the time of Meghan Markle. I mean, he's a Leo, born around the same time as the royal wedding. So here, sorry about the delay in putting up his chart. And he was born on July the 24th, 1981. So born a week or two before Meghan, and he has his sun at 1 degree 20 Leo, and he's got his North Node at 1 degree 42 Leo. So he has got a Sun-Pluto conjunction right opposition his sun, and I don't know what kind of pressures he's on. I mean, you could say it's just about power. I mean, he is someone who likes to be in control, but it could be a challenge to his power. I mean, even though things are working in his favor now, I mean, I think that Donald Trump becoming president of El Salvador becoming president of the United States is probably good news for Nayib Bukele, because I think they have a similar philosophy. But still, there may be pressures at home that Nayib Bukele needs to consider. And finally, I just want to look at a few people who have Sun conjunct Pluto. I'm not going to spend very long on this. Brian Koberger was accused of the murder of 4 students in Moscow, Idaho. They were 4 students, and someone broke into their house at sort of around 4 a.m. or something like that, and just killed them all. And Brian Kober was a graduate student in Washington State University in Pullman, which is just about, I think it's about 10 miles from Moscow, Idaho. And so he's on trial for his life in Idaho. Idaho being very much a sort of death penalty state, and which is kind of really weird, isn't it? I mean, if he did do it, we don't know whether he did it. So he's living in Pullman, which is in Washington State, and Washington is not a death penalty state. But he's 10 miles away from a death penalty state. So he just does that 10 miles, and at least that's the accusation, that he, if he did it, when we don't know if he did it, to sort of move to just deliberately go to a death penalty state, or a state that happens to be a death penalty state, to commit the crime. That seems a somewhat self-destructive things to do. But of course, we don't know whether he committed the crime, because he's still on trial, or about to be on trial, and he has a Sun-Pluto conjunction. And so with a Sun-Pluto conjunction, you could say that it is someone who has a strong concept of their own power, and also perhaps lack of power. And you could say that Sun-Pluto wants to demonstrate their power. But Sun-Pluto conjunction can also be quite awkward, and his social skills may not be great. That's not always the case with Sun-Pluto. I mean, Pluto can work in two different ways. Sun-Pluto conjunction can be a person who is very powerful and very charismatic, but it also can be awkward and a little bit clumsy. And when they try to assert themselves, it just doesn't come over right. So that can be an issue with Sun-Pluto conjunctions. And when we think about Sun-Pluto conjunction, someone whose social skills are appearing to be worse and worse as time goes on is the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer, he is not handling things well. So here with Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, Sun conjunct Pluto, he is someone who certainly wants to be in power. He wants to be in control. He likes to, his government is trying to control people at many different levels, and he is obsessed about the far right. He sort of blames any criticism, criticism about immigration or anything else. Oh, it's the far right. And that would be Sun Pluto. But he's not charismatic. He's clumsy. And that can be how Sun Pluto works. And so it's not really working out for him. I mean, if you want to be in control, if you want to be a control freak, you kind of need the charisma to support it. And his speeches are sort of somewhat wooden, and he's not inspiring anyone. And particularly now that he's prime minister, he was perhaps a little bit of an unknown quantity before he became prime minister. And now we're seeing that Sun Pluto. We're seeing the Sun Pluto, wanting power, but not really having the charisma to see it through. Now, someone who definitely does have charisma, even if you don't like him, is George Galloway. So George Galloway, he has a sort of podcast, the Moat podcast, mother of all talk shows, and he's a very accomplished communicator. I mean, he made a global name for himself for his criticism of the Iraq War in 2003. I think he went to Washington and testified, and a very fluent communicator. And he has Sun Pluto conjunction in Leo rising. So this is what he presents. I mean, in terms of his own actual power, politically, he got elected to the House of Commons, but he wasn't really interested in just following the establishment route, and he's no longer a member of parliament. He does get elected quite a lot, but he loses his seat quite a lot. But at the moment, he's not a member of parliament, and he perhaps realizes he's got power outside parliament. And he is very compelling. His arguments are compelling. He's, of course, a really an outspoken critic of Israel, but his political views are kind of interesting. He's not woke, for example. And I don't even know if he's left-wing anymore. He used to be pretty much on the left, but I'm not quite sure where he stands politically. But he's an example of someone who really is able to use that Sun-Pluto conjunction in a very effective way. And if you're trying to be charismatic and you want to be a leader, the former head of Hezbollah, who was killed by Israel, he had a Sun-Pluto conjunction, in Virgo. And so in certain cases, a Sun-Pluto conjunction can help you be an effective, charismatic leader, but you've got to look at other things in the chart. Again, look at the example of Keir Starmer. I mean, he has Sun-Pluto conjunction in Virgo like Keir Starmer, but he was much more effective than Keir Starmer in terms of being a leader of Hezbollah. Maybe he was helped by the fact that he maybe had a Moon-Jupiter conjunction in Sagittarius, where we don't really know where that moon is. And I think that is about it. I mean, with Sun-Pluto conjunction, there is something very persistent about it, and you can really decide you want to do something. And if you want to be an assassin, having a Sun-Pluto conjunction may be helpful. Brian Kohberger, of course, we don't know whether or not he committed that crime in Idaho, but that was a crime which involved, the killing of 4 people in a very systematic way. A person who two other assassins who I've looked at quite recently. One of them is Jan Kubiš, the Czech the Czech soldier who's parachuted during the Second World War, who killed Heydrich, who persistently pursued Heydrich and with totally single-mindedly with him and Gabčík. They went for Heydrich. They had a plan. They ambushed him on a hairpin, and he has a Sun-Pluto conjunction. Not an exact Sun-Pluto conjunction. I mean, Pluto in Gemini conjunct Sun in Cancer, but it must have helped in terms of him being able to see it through. Even when the first attempt to kill Heydrich, Gabčík threw a bomb at him. No, sorry, hold on. No, sorry, Gabčík. No, how did it work? Gabčík's machine gun jammed, but Kubiš threw a bomb at Heydrich, and it was a bomb that killed Heydrich that gave him blood poisoning that led to his death, I don't know, a week later or something. So that's one example of an assassin. Another example who I've looked at, I think quite recently, is Leon Zolgoj. And Leon Goljos, don't have a time of birth for him. He was born in Detroit, and he had, okay, not an exact Sun-Pluto conjunction, but he did have a Sun-Pluto conjunction. And his Sun was actually pretty close to the Aries point, 45 degrees from the Aries point. And he assassinated McKinley. I think that was in 1901, was that right? I may have got my dates wrong. But so he assassinated the US president, and he was, of course, executed for that. But Sun-Pluto can give one a single-mindedness, and if one's decided one wants to kill someone, having a Sun-Pluto conjunction may help. And anyway, that's it. That's all I've got to say for today. I hope you found this video of some interest. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.